from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. Ryan Edwards, Benjamin Allbright, joined in studio by the one and only Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. What up, Steve?
What up, R. Edwards? What's up, Benjamin Allbright?
Good to have you here, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. We were excited to bring you in studio today to talk to you about Drew Lock working with Peyton Manning this offseason.
It's music to my ears.
Yeah, well, people are pretty excited about it. Now, it's a little bit different than it was last year. Last year, you had the Zoom sessions. This year, opportunity to go over film together, to work on drills. What do you think we should read into this right now?
Well, you should read into it that this is a great thing for Drew Lock. Peyton Manning is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play this game, Hall of Famer, the whole 9 yards. And to be able to be on the field with Peyton Manning, going through drills, seeing how Peyton Manning did it, seeing what progressions Peyton Manning went through, seeing how Peyton Manning stepped up into the pocket to make the passes, how he reads the defenses, all those different things. If he can get that down and simplify that in his mind and be able to do it even half as good as Peyton Manning, Drew Lock is going to be a very good quarterback.
Well, right, and that's the difference between what they were doing last year, which is a couple of Zoom calls, and what they're doing this year. It's the difference between Beethoven's Fifth and a song by Linkin Park. So, at the end of the day, I'm off. Well, I didn't want to go that low. But
wow. Yeah, I was like, please don't mention Patrick Rule. Please don't. Oh, dang it.
There it is. No, I mean, like, Peyton's one of the best to ever do it, and his time now, even post-playing career, is monopolized a lot. So you got to believe that Peyton Manning believes in Drew Lock if he's willing to give of himself and of his own time to go out and do film and field work with Drew Lock.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, Drew Lock has to make the most of this situation because, you don't get these opportunities that frequently. And, we all know that Peyton Manning, his time is, like you said, valuable. He doesn't do this that much. Now, we've seen him up in front of coaches, college coaches, maybe even some NFL coaches, showing them how to run different drills and the purposes of the different drills. And that's what we hope that Drew Lock will be able to take from that is, hey, what is the purpose of these drills? Which drills are the most high value? Which ones are the most important for me to do? And how do I do them properly to make my game even better? And, I'm optimistic that we're going to see a nice jump just from him working with Peyton Manning. Now, granted, if he's only working with him one day, that's not going to do much. But I think it's going to be an extended thing where he's working with them on a consistent basis, and that's going to help out Drew Lock big time.
Yeah, I love that you're pointing out the work ethic there and the meticulous nature of how Peyton Manning goes about it. I mean, it feels like at really any position, but especially the quarterback position, that's very valuable.
Yeah, and, Peyton Manning, he's a guy, he's a stickler for the details, and he always, is making sure that guys are doing it right. It's not going to be any loafing, any kind of, half effort given with Peyton Manning. So I'm sure he'll expect that out of Drew Lock, and in turn, maybe Drew Lock will incorporate that into his game and his leadership, not accepting anything half speed from guys on the team. And, hopefully the team will be better from the interactions that he has with Peyton Manning.
Well, it really is a game of inches, and Peyton Manning makes sure that every one of those inches matter. When he talks about things, all the details, every little thing adds up to getting that right. And, you think everybody gets it, but stuff happens.
Yeah.
Now, for you, Steve, when you've had an opportunity to mentor other players, when you've had the opportunity to impart your wisdom, I guess you could say, and I know that you tend to be a little more humble about those things. And I remember when we did the show together for years, you kind of said, look, I don't want to get in the way of what other coaching is happening. And so this is an interesting situation, too, because what Mike Shula is teaching Drew Lock may not be the exact same things that, say, Peyton Manning is teaching him. But again, if you're Mike Shula, I don't think you're upset necessarily that Drew Lock is getting some help from Peyton Manning. I feel like this is the same situation for you in times that you've had a chance to help other safeties or DBs. What did you always hope that they would take away from those conversations?
Well, more so, not a specific defense or, how to play a specific coverage, but more so just the thought, the process, when you come out of the huddle, what are you looking at? I'm looking at their sideline to see who's coming in, to see what personnel they have. Then I'm getting the call from our side and, figuring out, hey, okay, this is the play. what am I going to expect based on the personnel that the other team has in the game? And then, just it's a whole process, and it happens in split seconds. It happens very quickly. And if you have a nice process down, you have the right way of thinking about it as you're coming up to the play, leading up to the play. And I think that just increases the chances of you having a successful play if you have everything right in your mind.
Yeah, what is as they come in and as they're lining up, getting up there and quickly identifying and diagnosing, where's the mic? What are they? Where's the pressure coming from? Is it field boundary? Are they showing double A? What's coming at me right here? Are the corners tipping with their their hips slanted? Are they dropping at depth? Where are they sitting at right now? So I can identify all these things and already know before the ball is snapped what I'm going to be doing. That's the difference between Peyton Manning and some other guy.
Right, because I'm sure once Peyton Manning got to where he really understood the game of football at this level, he comes to the line of scrimmage and, you see guys moving around and, he can, hut, hut, hut. And, hey, the guys, they show their card, they show their hand. And, that's what Drew Lock, he needs to get to that point to where he can make teams show their hand. And it makes it just so much easier. Like, okay, now I know you're playing cover 3. I got you.
Well, there's a level of confidence there. And I think a lot of times what we attribute to that position, I think, again, once every position is the game slowing down. That's what it looks like, is where you're not thinking about those small things because they become second nature. And Peyton Manning was the king of that, making everything look second nature, knowing what you wanted to do on defense before you knew what you wanted to do on defense. And again, I can't stress enough that we're not sitting here saying Drew Lock is on the path to becoming Peyton Manning, but there are certain work habits that I feel as though he could get into, and it's just, if nothing else, just being able to diagnose. We keep coming back to that point, but being able to diagnose, that is just so valuable. I kind of hope if there's something that he is going to work on with him is a little bit of his footwork. And I know that comes back to what is the coaching staff doing versus what is he doing. But Peyton Manning, that's just, to make that stuff second nature seems so valuable.
Yeah, and Peyton Manning wasn't the fastest quarterback, but he didn't need to be, because what he didn't have in speed, he made up for with the mental part of the game, just understanding where his players, where his offensive linemen were, where he needed to scramble, how he can step up into the pocket. And, hey, he even scrambled and, he made some nice runs throughout his career as well. So they're going to be different players, but Drew Lock can certainly take a lot from Peyton Manning in his game.
Yeah, it feels like a great opportunity, and definitely glad, at least this offseason, despite the fact that some of the OTAs are not going to be the same, you get an opportunity to work with Peyton in a little bit different capacity. Can only really mean good things. Thank you, Steve, for coming in studio.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. When we come back, we're going to go over some draft myths according to Randy Mueller. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Thank you to Steve Atwater for joining us earlier. Ben, I wanted to get into this article from Randy Mueller, who's the former NFL Exec of the Year, former GM. He wrote about draft myths and how some people think the draft is a crapshoot. And I thought about you when I was reading through this, because this is something that I think scouts and front office people just cringe at the idea when people say, oh, it's just a crapshoot. We see more misses than hits oftentimes, and you're basically throwing darts at a dartboard and blindfolded more or less. There is something he pointed out that I think is very important for George Paton. I think it's very important for all front offices and evaluators. And he talked about how the process leads you to the players. And he says it's so important that you stick to the process. And he said, look, your process can be flawed if you lack consensus building mechanism or discipline to stick to it. And then instead you go for swing for the fences or needs. Talking specifically about quarterbacks at the top of the draft. What do you think about that?
I think it's accurate from somebody who's been there and won an award for being the best general manager in the NFL. The process is important. That's how you arrive at the conclusion. It's the difference between deductive and inductive reasoning. You have some people that have a conclusion and they look for the stats to support that, or look for cherry pick the evidence to support that, and then you have people who go where the evidence takes them. And the people who go with the evidence where the evidence takes them tend to be better drafters. Just saying. And so instead of saying, I like this player because I saw him on TV, let me go find a bunch of stats that support him and make him look, are positive numbers and make him look good, maybe what you should do is go back from scratch and say, okay, let's start with this evaluation process we have, go through and eliminate all these variables, and at the end, if this player really is what we think he is, he should be there anyway.
He went to an example of Jared Goff, and for him, he said, need trumped consensus.
Yep.
Says, I know many evaluators who did not even see him as a first-round talent, much less the first pick in the NFL draft, but desire and need allowed them to talk themselves into overlooking all of that in order to select him number 1 overall.
And I was one of those people, and I can tell you, I talked to people who with the Rams at the time, and there was a split consensus in that building. First of all, about if either of those quarterbacks were even worth it, and whether or not Carson Wentz or Jared Goff were, but there were two of the more vocal people that wanted Goff. Jeff Fisher didn't want Goff. Jeff Fisher wanted to stick with what they had, which was Case Keenum, and build off of that. And so I think that perhaps some of those voices should have been listened to. I mean, benefit of hindsight. Hindsight is 20/20. You see anything, but I think that. They did. They passed on the process because there was this whole thing about, well, we're moving to L.A., we need a sexy quarterback to capture the market, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of that, I think, trumped what was the smart thing to do. And then they cashed in all these draft picks to move up. And it cost them the ability to build and set a great baseline for what they needed. Now, they recovered from that when they got a hotshot coach in there in Sean McVay, and they kind of used Stan Kroenke's money to circumvent the cap a little bit. But there's going to come a point where the bill comes due for the Rams. It'll be sooner than later. And not having any picks to replenish the talent pool while at the same time paying out exorbitant signing bonuses to circumvent the cap is eventually going to bite them.
But this is why it's important here, coming from Randy's perspective, but also talking about George Paton in his first year here with the Broncos, that he needs to stick to his process. Despite the calls for needing a quarterback or trading up for a quarterback, which you've deemed most on the show as inefficient more than anything, I think that this is something to keep in mind here, that you see teams all do it a little bit different. But there are some teams that sort of shoot from the hip. And there are some teams that will say, you know what, we've been working on this process for the entire year, because these scouts have been working the entire year on getting these evaluations. You get to this point in the pre-draft process and you're putting your board together, and then you scrap all of it off of a gut instinct. And you know what? And we're going to get into this in the next segment a little more. A guy that knows a lot about that's John Elway. John Elway has had experience doing that and doing the other side of it too, sticking to his process and finding out that he can get really good players as long as he sticks to his guns.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have to if you built a process, you have to trust that process. If you don't trust it and you're just shooting from the hip and you're doing the gun thing, why do you have the process to begin with? The process was flawed. Your methodology was flawed. Go back and fix the methodology so you're not doing those kinds of things. And think about it. You can think about it. And you can apply that maxim and that mechanism to almost anything in life. Buying stocks. If you've got a process of identifying a stock that's undervalued, and then you go out and you buy that stock and you watch it rise and make some money, right? But then all of a sudden you hear something on the news and it causes you to change your mind. You push on. It's the same thing. And this is the same equivalence with evaluating talent. It's basically the same thing. You heard something on TV, or you heard something here, you saw something there, and it caused you to change your mind. All this research that you did, you're throwing it out the window for a commercial that's designed to get you to invest in that.
Just to piggyback on that, the other point, he makes two more points in this article. One point he makes is about risers and fallers, something you've said multiple times that does not exist inside most NFL teams. If they are listening to those outside voices, listening to other media members, maybe a little bit too much, then sure, you could let sort of the flow of things dictate. But in the end, he points out, if you've had an evaluation of a player, like this whole Zach Wilson is a riser, right? All of a sudden, Zach Wilson is top 2. It's like, you should have had your evaluation of Zach Wilson all the way back in November. You should have known what he is and what he could be back then, or else you weren't doing your job.
Correct. And you shouldn't be letting some bowl game somewhere change your mind on those things. Jamarcus Russell got drafted number 1 overall on the bowl game where he went head-to-head with Brady Quinn, even though Notre Dame had a bad defense and LSU had a great defense. So Brady Quinn was up against a great defense, and Russ was against Jamarcus Russell against me. And that now there were other factors involved there, but that was the main thing, is he got drafted off that. It was a poor decision. It was a very poor decision. So I think that is part of it. You got to have your evaluation done, and you got to have your evaluation done. Your evaluation isn't what these people think about; it's what you think about them. Because if what you think about them doesn't matter, why are you doing it to begin with?
100%. When we come back, what will John Elway and Vic Fangio's role be in the upcoming NFL draft? We'll get to that next.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Let's get back into our conversation about the upcoming NFL draft. George Paton in his first draft with the Broncos, his first time as a full-time GM, and the support system that's around him. We were talking a little bit about the draft myths and risers and fallers and all that stuff. Another one he kind of pointed out here is that the role of the head coach and the coaching staff when it comes to draft night and what those guys can do to help. And he pointed out, now this is Randy Mueller, former NFL exec and GM, and he pointed out how Nick Saban back in Miami was one of the best working relationships he ever had, because they sort of prided themselves on having a good foundation and understanding of the players and the prospects. But it's not that like that in every single organization. Can you give me a little bit of a background and a perspective from your side of what the role of coaches generally should be in draft night?
Well, it depends. I mean, you have some coaches that are very involved. You can look at Pete Carroll or Bill Belichick that are de facto general managers in a lot of ways. They don't have the title, but they're making decisions. Then you have guys like, for instance, Vic Fangio, who's on the other side of the spectrum. Vic's not in there dictating as far as that kind of stuff goes. He knows what he needs, and he'll give his input, and he'll give input and feedback on players. But Vic's like, you get me the groceries, I'll make the meal. He doesn't need to go shopping for the groceries necessarily, and that's what we've kind of seen so far. Now Vic has jumped up and down, and Draymond, that was his guy. Vic Fangio had a lot of say in the KJ Hamler pick. Because he said, that to me, that looks like a tough guy to defend. Let's bring him in, And so, he has, there is say there, but I think that, it's good to have some separation of church and state there. And I think the reason that you want that is because maybe the coach is a little too close to the situation.
Right.
He has personal relationships with the players. And he's going to have his guys that he likes, whether they're up to par or not. And as a general manager, you can kind of step back from that just a little bit and look at it dispassionately and say, you know what? I'm not sure that, and I'm just going to pick a name out of a hat here, I'm not sure that Josie Jewell is a starting caliber inside backer. We need to upgrade that position. And while Vic's like, man, I made it work with Josie last year. Joe, that's my boy. That's the outlaw. Josie Jewell. It's the same. You get a general manager who's dispassionate, can take a step back and look and say, I like Josie. He's got heart. He's a good player. He's a good football player. But I think we could upgrade the athleticism there. We could, maybe Josie's got a role here, but maybe what we need to do is upgrade that position. Maybe we need to get you some more athleticism there, and we're a better football team for it.
But this comes back to the process leading to the players.
Yeah.
And this is where this is going to be an interesting moment here for George Paton coming into this situation where John L. will probably be in the war room. Same thing with Vic Fangio, some of the coaches, scouts, so on and so forth. And George Paton has to take in that information but stay with his process and not go down the path of needs or reaching for players, go the swing and miss, or more importantly, using emotion to dictate what he's doing. So I think that's kind of an interesting balance there. But I think George Paton is kind of equipped for that. It seems as though the way he's handled this the entire time has been kind of, this upgrades our team. And in some ways, I can also work with the fact that it also helps our organization because our locker room is improved by the fact that we're bringing back Shelby Harris. We're signing Justin Simmons to an extension. Everybody sees that there's value in playing well for this team and this organization because they know they have a chance to stick around. So, but coming back to the draft here, that's where I think that Randy kind of drives home this whole, hey, with Vic Fangio, you're going to want to listen to his points, but he's got to be part of the process or he's not part of the process.
Right, and I think that's what it is. I think he's a part of the process, but it's not – the buck doesn't stop there.
Yes.
I think his input is a part of the formula. It's an add-end, but George Paton is going to have to take all those add-ends, make a sum out of it, and then take and get that player. And that's the thing. That's what Randy, who by the way was George Paton's boss down there in Miami,
yes,
is trying to, I think, get across is, hey, you got to find a process that works, and if you know that process works, don't fall for the best example I can think of this is in The Matrix, the first Matrix movie where the girl starts walking. You're in the process of like learning how to do all this stuff, and the redhead walks by or whatever, and you turn your head. Don't get turned by the blonde or the redhead or whatever. Don't get turned by that. Stick with your process, and you'll be better for it.
Okay, John Elway's role in all of this. He said he wants to be in an advisory role. Mm-hmm. The last couple of drafts, we thought the Broncos have turned a corner a bit.
They've improved.
They went through this on The Athletic, and I thought this was a great breakdown from Nick Kosmider. He gave a little bit of an incomplete this last draft because you really don't know what these guys are going to be yet. But the previous two drafts, Bs, and then D's, like for several years in a row. Mm-hmm. We talk about that barbell, right? He had like A's at the very beginning. They had this stretch there where they're kind of shooting from the hip. They're going with some emotional picks, some upside guys, some athletic guys. Mm-hmm. Missed entirely.
Yeah.
Then they went with more of guys that were team captains. They were leaders. And all of a sudden you swung back the other way, and now you got a bunch of Bs, and then we have this incomplete. So how can John Elway use that information to help out George Paton?
I think that's what he does. I think he just lays it out and said, hey, here's what we did. You don't have to do the same thing. But we found success with this. When we were out there looking for the best athletes and hoping to coach them up, we had a higher bust rate just because they didn't always pan out. So we went out and got football guys, captains, multi-year starters, things like that. And it seemed to work a little bit better for us. I think John should be a source of institutional knowledge in what has happened, but at the same time doesn't want to impose what he did on George Paton. You got to let him be his own man. You got to grow up, let the bird leave the nest, let him be his own man. But at the same time, you can show him you can jump out the nest first and show him how to fly.
It seems like John has taken that role already.
Yeah, this is George Paton's show.
Yes.
I see on social media every once in a while people mention it Elway. No, this is George Paton's show. He is running the show. And so I think John handled the transition perfectly. I think he's put the ball in George's court, and George is running with it.
All right, really well said. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thank you for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight. Tune in to Broncos TV every weeknight at 6:30, right here on KTVD Channel 20.